You're listening to Coming of Cage, a Nicolas Cage podcast. Welcome back to the Coming of Cage podcast. I am your host, Derek. I have my longtime co-host, Ryan, here with me. Hey, buddy.
What's up?
What's up? Good to see you too. And we have our first guest on the show. If you've listened to our other podcasts back in the day, we brought guests on a lot, but this is our first guest for Coming of Cage. So I'm going to introduce the comedian, the writer, the voice actor, Meredith Nudo.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on here. It's an honor to be the first guest and also to talk about Mandy, which is like super one of my favorite movies. Yay!
We're really excited to have you. I missed having guests join us on the show because Ryan and I can be a bit of an echo chamber when it's just the two of us. So
yeah, and Derek's opinions can get a little stale after a while. So
that's hurtful. That's hurtful.
Well,
that's okay. This is exciting. Meredith, do you want to tell anybody, our listeners specifically, about yourself at all?
Yes. Well, like Derek said, I am a writer and editor and comedian and voice actress. And I also host a sporadically updated podcast that was a podcast that then became a radio show here on one of the local stations. And then it became a podcast again called Poppenschlock with my longtime creative partner, Jacob King, who is amazing. We just haven't, our schedules are so erratic that we don't always review as often as we want to. We've been doing this off and on since 2014, and we like to, we're both English majors. Mm-hmm. So we like to analyze film from a storytelling perspective. And
very cool.
Yeah, so because there's so much overlap between the way we analyze literature and the way we analyze film. So that is our perspective.
Awesome.
We did not cover Mandy though. So I have like all of this pent up excitement because I never got a chance to talk about it properly.
Well, this is it. This is your big chance.
Thank you so much.
So, both of our listeners can't wait to hear it.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, we are talking about the 2018 Mandy, starring, of course, Nic Cage. Amazon describes the movie as when a nightmarish cult attack Red and Mandy, the shocking assault leads to a spiraling, surreal, bloody rampage of all-out, mind-altering vengeance. Red being the character that Nic Cage plays. So there you go. That's the film. It is interesting to try and find it on streaming. You can rent it on Amazon. It is available on Shudder and AMC Plus.
And Tubi.
And Tubi. Yes, that's right. And Tubi. Our favorite ad-supported streaming platform.
Yeah.
So this was my first viewing of the movie. I watched it last night for the first time. Ryan, had you ever seen it before?
I had not. I somehow, I really wanted to see it because I'd heard so many good things about it. And the, your background in our video chat here, Derek, I had seen, that, shot across the internet many times, along with some other stills from the movie, and it made me want to see it. But somehow it slipped under my radar. Probably because it's not available on any streaming platform anywhere, except for ones that you have to pay extra for. So, but yeah, I had not seen it. I hadn't even read, before we started watching it, I hadn't even read the description or watched the trailer. So it was all kind of blindsiding to me.
Blindsiding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went in pretty blind too. Now, Meredith, you'd seen this before.
Oh yeah. I saw it when it came out. I saw it, and I've watched it at home several times. I also have a Shudder account, so it's pretty easy for me to just hop on and watch it whenever I feel like it. It's a movie that I like to just have on in the background as well sometimes. I'm going to preface this by saying that I, of course, am going to be extremely skewed positive because this has a lot of things that are just very much my tastes. I like slasher horror stuff. I like Panos Cosmatos, the director. He also did Beyond the Black Rainbow as well. I am a fan of the very surrealist lighting techniques that he uses in his movies. And I feel like if you just tell me Nicolas Cage chainsaw fight, I'm going to be like, yeah, that's absolutely what I'm into. Like he signed me up. But I like occult stuff and Satanist stuff. Like, wow, that came out wrong.
We're learning all kinds of things.
Yeah, it's an educational program, friends. But I like those kinds of movies. And I really am a big fan of like, I guess neo grindhouse is kind of the way of putting it. Like this and Hobo with a Shotgun, where they clearly have a love for the really old style, like Cold War era grindhouse movies, and very genre-y stuff. That's the kind of thing that I'm super into. So, another good one would be Psycho Goreman, which is, it's more on the comedic side, but there's still a very clear love of that genre in there. I like a lot of original grindhouse movies, but they're not always the easiest to track down and find remember the names of. So like I said, this sort of reimagining of that with a more kind of contemporary look and critique. It's super what I'm into. Malignant, I think, would be another good example. I love Malignant. So like I said, that's part of why I'm going to be like 20 exclamation points about Mandy, while also understanding that that's not everybody's movie preference.
Well,
that's true.
I'm going to just say off the bat. So like, now I'm a little prone to headaches. I'm not going to lie. Ryan knows this, but this movie gave me a headache watching.
Oh yeah.
If we were not talking about this for the podcast, I don't think I could have finished it.
No, and that's very fair because, like I said, the way that Panos Cosmatos lights his movies, I could very easily see somebody getting a headache or a migraine from it. That's very fair.
It was wild. I'll talk about like the specific times where it was really bad for me when we get to those. But let's kick things off then. So Ryan, obviously spoiler warnings. We don't really do that well on this show, but spoiler warning, since it's a 2018 film, seems fair. Ryan, what's your first note that you have?
Well, my first note is actually, it's like a post note after the movie, something that I found out later. I don't even know if it's true, so we're going to have Derek fact check, which he does all my notes after every movie. So I heard that the director's dad was the one that directed Tombstone, which I thought was really interesting. Yeah.
That is interesting.
You're going to have to fact check me on that, but I read that somewhere on the internet, which we know must be true. So my first real note from the movie is that Nic Cage is a lumberjack and I'm here for it.
Yeah.
So real quick, that is true. His dad directed Tombstone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and Rambo awesome. First Blood Part 2.
Rambo, yeah, that was another one on the list. But for me, Tombstone, come on.
Well, yeah, you and Kurt Russell.
We have a relationship that he doesn't know about. Yeah.
Yeah, and the royalties from Tombstone apparently funded Beyond the Black Rainbow, which if Mandy's lighting gave you a headache, Beyond the Black Rainbow probably would.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to see that. I've seen some clips.
Oof. That's good to know.
Great movie, but your health is more important than watching it, I think.
Oh, I don't know. We'll see. But
I don't know. Based on some of the movies we've reviewed, I don't think that's necessarily true.
Yeah, that's fair. So lumberjack Nic Cage, I do have to say, I felt like they probably wasted some money on that helicopter. I feel like they probably could have saved a few bucks and just not had the helicopter.
Yeah, and the whole lumberjack thing doesn't really come into play. Like, he does use an axe later in the movie and a chainsaw, but he doesn't seem to be exceptionally skilled. And I mean, I don't think lumberjack skills don't really translate to like combat, but cutting down trees versus combat. I don't know. It was fun to see, and I was excited. I thought we might get more of that, but it was really just like a little blip at the beginning where you see he's a lumberjack.
I did think it was going somewhere else because he's like when they're on the helicopter and the other dude's like trying to give him like I'm assuming like a drink of something. He's like angry. Nic Cage looked mad, and so I did expect something to come of that job. That was a little surprising.
I think. It's very heavily implied that he's a recovering alcoholic.
Oh,
So
really?
because like if you think the scene right after, I mean, we've already warned you about spoilers. They burn Mandy to death in front of him, and he's able to escape and stumbles home. Notice that when he goes into the bathroom, there's vodka stashed in the very back, like it's being hidden.
I didn't make that
Like,
connection.
and then
That's interesting.
His first instinct then was to start drinking and start chugging the bottle of vodka and screaming. And I can imagine kind of why he'd be a little like, hey, bro, I'm going, I'm working through this. Like, why would you offer me booze?
That's interesting.
So I would be, it's that. But again, though, I've also seen this movie like a chillion times. So I didn't pick up on that at first, but you kind of do over time and put things together. Kind of like, he's a lumberjack, but he does display some very careful guerrilla warfare tactics.
Oh, yes.
And given the 80s setting and his age, he probably fought in Vietnam.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Possible.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking, because he's good at ambush warfare.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What you got next, Ryan?
Producer Elijah Wood.
I know. How wild is that?
Yeah. I saw that. I was like, that's got to be the Elijah Wood, right? That's not another guy named Elijah Wood that's just like giving money. But he does some weird stuff. So I can imagine that he heard the pitch for this, was like, oh, yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, I think Elijah Wood has done some producing for It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, too.
Yeah, he's done producer stuff, and like his personal projects, he's done some odd stuff, too. So I'm not super surprised by it. But it was nice to see that,
Can confirm it is
a familiar name.
It is that Elijah Wood.
Yes, that one I did do my research on because I had to know.
You had to know.
My next note is, I don't really remember the context, but Eric Estrada from Chips is the next note.
Yeah, it's the joke that he tells.
I love that.
Oh yeah. It didn't really land for me. I'm not. Maybe it's because I'm not a Chips fan, but I don't know. I don't know. So you're a comedian. Maybe it meant more to you.
I had a different view of it. Is that it's not supposed to be funny.
Okay.
Right.
Well, then that makes it better.
Yeah. I took it as like just a corny, silly, weird thing to establish intimacy and the way that their relationship dynamic works. That he's just the guy that comes home and says really ridiculous bad jokes. Yeah. That's what I took it as. Like it's not funny. It's just a character and relationship establishing moment there. But that's also your mileage may vary.
No, I took that as well. It's just like he's not good at telling jokes. That's how I took it. And It is worth noting this takes place in 1983.
Yeah, so Chips is relevant.
Yeah. It'd be a little bit of a out there kind of joke now,
Which is when I watched it, was now. So
right. But the movie tells you
context.
That's
true. That's true. Next I have Where is Their Bedroom? Because so like the way you're introduced to their bedroom, it looks like it's a mattress in the middle of like a backlit waterfall or something. Like you mentioned the lighting I think I have something about that later about the lighting overall in the movie, but the lighting that he decides to use, he has like this very weird like blue light. It is cool, but it also, this house is just basically all windows, and it was a little weird, and it was hard to like, are they in a bedroom, or are they, I don't know, maybe I'm just too like literal.
No, I'm with you there. Like everything about where they live is everything I don't want in the place I live. Like they're in the middle of nowhere. They've got windows everywhere. So if someone does come by, that, they can see everything going on inside.
Oh yeah.
Like if a bear were, I don't know, if a bear were to show up, I don't know, is that a thing where they are, it could just like crash through that glass and they're done. Like it's just, that house stressed me out.
I feel like that about the house from that Lita and Hector were living in Sandman. If you've watched that, they have that all glass house, and
similar.
Every time I watched that, I was like, "This is my nightmare." and like it aesthetically, it looks great, but the practicalities of living in something that people can see you in gives me hives. Like just looking at it makes me upset.
Yep. And at first I thought it was like a screened-in patio at first.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah. But then, you know,
You
as
get
time
some better
goes on,
looks at it later.
yeah.
Yeah. Random Marvel reference was the next thing. He says Galactus is his favorite planet, I think.
Yes.
So
Which is cool, but it's a
Yeah.
weird character establishing thing. Like he just happens to follow Marvel while he's lumberjacking.
Well, Nic Cage does. Like I
It's
think
Nic
that
Cage,
line,
yeah.
there's some really interesting stuff in that exchange because he also says Saturn's his favorite planet, but that's the name of his production company too. It's Saturn Productions or something like that. So I think that's just Nic Cage putting himself in the movie a little bit.
I think Nic Cage put himself a lot of bit in this movie.
That's true. So I did read that apparently the day before shooting started is when his wife and him divorced.
Oh no.
The day before. And he, I guess, didn't see it coming. You know, obviously, I mean, who knows, right? But that's what he says. And so that probably pushed his emotions a bit in particular directions.
Yeah, it's worth noting that before this Marvel reference, she says that her favorite planet, I think, is Jupiter.
Yes.
And then at the very end of the movie, there's Jupiter in the sky, very huge.
Yeah.
Which was a little weird. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Stylized.
And before in the final battle, Jedediah refers to him as a Jovan warrior.
Yeah.
I didn't make those connections.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to be honest, the tail end of the movie where like they pan up to the sky, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more as the movie goes on. I thought that was supposed to imply he was on like an alien planet.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's not really like, it's not you're not getting handheld into like what all these weird stylistic choices are. But that was one that I kind of liked that once I figured it out and like thought about it.
Yeah.
I like the beauty and the ambiguity. Like that's another sort of movie type that I like. Is it real or is it like a magical world? And so much of what seems very surreal here could be written off by the fact that the entire last third of the movie is fueled by all the drugs.
All the drugs.
So many drugs. Multiple drugs. So maybe Jupiter really was hanging in the sky and he's on a different planet. Maybe he's on drugs. Maybe it's both. Like, I love that ambiguity. I think I think this is a very masterful work of surrealism that does make you question the reality of it. And I'm gonna make comparisons again to Beyond the Black Rainbow. Beyond the Black Rainbow was a straight up science fiction story where there isn't that degree of ambiguity. So I really liked the application of that sort of sensibility and the surrealism into something where you're just like, I don't even know what is and is not real. I love that. I love that for them.
Interesting. I have a hard time believing that what they call the Black Riders, the guys on the motorcycles.
Yeah.
I have a hard time believing they're human after the movie. That's just my take. You know, I don't know. Ryan, I don't know. You're giving me a skeptical look.
No, I mean, it's very ambiguous. You know, that was one of the things I didn't really have a problem with, that the demon bikers, which we'll get to, but that was not really a problem for me once I realized what this movie was, again,
it's
probably going to be.
Yeah, I don't mean to say that it's a bad thing. I just meant like I thought it was an alien, like they were aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could also be.
They could have been. Yeah. They don't really say. Well, I mean, they try and explain it, but nobody really knows, right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that one takes an arrow through the neck and just like takes it out, and he's like, "Well, I'm okay."
Drugs will do stuff to you.
Right. Exactly. But that could also be written off as, again, is it drugs? Are they demons? Are they the people from Hellraiser? You know,
they looked like Cenobites, right?
They absolutely.
Well, there's definitely references to that. There's a lot of that, like, reference to other horror movies. You know, they live by Camp Crystal Lake, which, I mean, that's so heavy-handed. I definitely like the more subtle, you know, clues to or homages to other horror films, but that one was pretty on the nose. Probably the most on the nose one. Probably a little unnecessary. They could have done something a little better than that, but.
I think they were like, well, we need a name that's like in horror that people will recognize. And like, well, there's only one lake, so that's all they had to choose from.
They also lived on Elm Street, I'm sure. You know, like, we're gonna get really creative. My next note is, do they live in a painting? Because I think this was after they went to sleep in that weird bedroom that like it showed the sky and the sky just like started morphing.
So that's
And
also why that was a hint of aliens to me. Like between what was happening in the sky, the bikers when they first show up, kind of the way it's shot makes it look like they were flying at first.
Yeah.
You know, and then you got the sky at the end. Like that for me was just like there's alien stuff. That's my take.
And what I really love about this movie is that makes sense. Like saying it's aliens, sure, that interpretation totally works. They're demons. That interpretation works. Everyone's on drugs and seeing and everything takes place in a reality that we would recognize, but it's heightened because of the drugs. Like all of those are completely reasonable interpretations, and that's why I love it. Because
we know for a fact that they were on drugs. Like
that's true.
Right.
That one's not debatable. It's like,
True.
but the
Okay,
other
fair.
things, the other parts could be like thrown in there too. Aliens and drugs, you know, that
Right.
Do the
Demons
alien?
and
Yeah, the aliens
drugs.
are taking the drugs. There you go.
maybe.
That's it.
My next note is creepy lady in the water. So his wife, there's like this weird, okay, and I'm going to get
Yes.
into it a little bit. I know you love this movie, so I'm going to try and phrase these things in ways
It's
that are not
okay
super
to not-
offensive.
Why it's not going to offend me that you don't like it or have issues with it.
People's
because
movies' choice are very personal. I understand that. So
Yeah,
I try to be nice about
I
things.
appreciate that, but like I said, I've been doing film crit stuff off and on since 2014. You have to be able to not. It's not like I made this movie.
That's true. So I feel like there's a term I'm trying to think of, and maybe one of you can remind me of what it is. I can't think of the actual term. What comes to mind is self-gratification, which not in like the masturbation sense, but in the sense of like they did a lot of things in this movie that they just, I'm guessing the director was just like wanting to do artsy fartsy type stuff. And that's fine. And I don't do a lot of indie movies because I don't really love the artsy, like, let's have a random shot of a woman's face half covered in water that doesn't do anything for the entire plot. You know, and that's not the only shot like that. There's a lot of shots that are just random and have nothing to do with the plot, and it just feels like they were added so that people could feel like they're artists. And I'm not saying they're not artists, because clearly the people that are involved in this movie are 100% artists, but I don't think they need that kind of stuff to get that across that they're artists. I don't really, self-indulgent maybe would be the better word.
Yeah, that shot in particular confused me because I wasn't sure it was Mandy because we had barely seen her at that point, and her, you know, it's mostly been dark, and so her face has been primarily obscured, and so for a bit I didn't know who that was, and then when there was no other person, I just assumed it was Mandy.
Yeah,
I was under the impression it was Mandy too.
It was weird. It's an odd shot. Because he's sitting at the fire again. He looks angry and upset, right? Like obviously once she's kidnapped and dead, like he has all the reason in the world to be upset, but we don't know why he seems to be in a bad mood at the beginning of the movie. I found that kind of ambiguous.
Yeah. That was ambiguous to me too. It bothered me a little. I really, like at the end of the day, I did really like this movie. But there's a lot of things about the movie that bothered me. Unfortunately.
And it is extremely self-indulgent. It just happens to be self-indulgent in ways that I find agreeable.
That's fair.
But
I mean, that's totally fair.
But I think self-indulgent is absolutely what this is. And like I said, you notice patterns. I like I said, I don't know if you've seen Beyond the Black Rainbow, but you know, you can obviously, all directors who have multiple works, you can see patterns emerging.
For sure.
In what they like. And there's a lot of similarities between this aesthetically. The lighting choices especially, very long, lingering shots of women in various degrees of dress that are, you know, and you know, in
men as well in a couple cases, at least in this one.
Yeah, but you know, and like I don't mind those things as if I find them aesthetically pleasing, even if they don't necessarily add anything to the storyline, because at the end of the day, I'm still a kid that went to art school. So, you know, I forgive it while also recognizing that it is.
And maybe this movie was made for people that went to art school. I mean,
I'm sure it was, and I'm one of those people. So.
Sure, and that's perfect. It found its audience with you. With me, some of these things did not quite land. I, based on this, would probably not watch any of the other movies this person is involved in if they're all fairly similar, and that's fine. It is what it is. He clearly has an audience, and like I said, I did enjoy a lot of this movie, and I'm of the opinion that the more out there oddball, like weird ass films that we get, the better, because you can only watch so many cookie cutter Marvel films before you're like, okay, I need like a palate cleanser, something.
I still go out and watch Marvel movies.
Oh, so do I. Every single one.
Yeah, I like that. I like that there's a variety. I wish that the variety was more accessible.
Right.
But that's a rant for another day. But at the end of the day, even movies I don't like, I'm still glad that they exist because I know people that like them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe in forcing people to there are so many people I know and love where I'm like, I love this movie. I don't think you would.
Yeah.
Like, this is not don't, just because I love it, I know your tastes and this is not to your taste. But like, the only exception being Ketty, the documentary about the cats in Istanbul. Everyone should love that.
Well, I do love cats.
That's the only Universal movie. And I feel like that's the real Voight-Kampf test is, did you watch Ketty and feel something? And if you didn't, then probably you're a replicant.
It's
Good to know.
Certainly possible, yeah.
Good to know.
It's the only movie that I would recommend to a Universal audience because you don't even see anything bad happening to cats just to create drama. It's literally just an hour and a half of people in Istanbul love their 100,000 feral cats.
Fascinating. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's
cycle back.
Apologies. I'm a tangenty kind of discusser.
You're okay. Ryan, what's the next note?
So pretty much throughout the rest of this movie, there's going to be a lot of notes about how culty this cult is. My next note is so culty. They were very, not the cult, but the way this movie was done, it was extremely heavy-handed. And I get that this is a grindhouse thing. It didn't really bother me. They were so heavy-handed with how culty this cult is.
Oh, yeah.
Some cults, you're like, oh, this guy, he just seems like a nice guy. Like, I could see how people would hang out with him, but everyone in this cult, the most culty person you could have possibly imagined, literally in every aspect.
Well, and he was like just Charles Manson with the serial numbers filed off.
Yeah, pretty much.
He was also like the folk singer that failed.
But it's better than
singing a song about himself.
Yes.
That was so weird.
It was so cringe.
Yeah. I was like, I like the Carpenters.
I'm probably going to offend some of our none of our listeners, because I doubt there's anybody with this name, but I said that Jeremiah is the most culty name.
It is a little on the nose.
Sorry, Jeremiah's out there. Yeah. We love you. I hope you're not cult leaders.
That's fair.
Just in general.
Yeah. But I mean, to their credit though, these actors who I don't really know many of the people in this movie, right? I know Bill Duke, but other than that, the cult people really sold the cult.
Oh yeah. Especially poor Lucy.
I really bought into what they were doing. I will say that much.
Wow.
I mean, they came off, and maybe it's my own biases against such things, but they came off exactly how I picture those people.
Well, remember, at some point, they call them hippie Jesus freaks, which they would have probably been about 70s throwbacks, kind of when that sort of thing was at its height.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Everyone in the cult is always 100% full cult. That was my next note.
Yeah.
Because there's no shades of gray in this cult. In terms of white or black, they're on that end. Whatever end that cult is on, everyone in that cult on all the time. It's fine. You're supposed to hate them, right? And they succeeded with that.
I do think that there was one exception though, when they had at the very end when they had the chemist. who was
Oh,
making the
yeah.
drugs. And Red was going through and he's like, man, what did they do to you? And then told him where the compound was because he's like, I'm just done. So I almost feel like he was the closest member of the cult who at that, and Lucy was extremely hypnotized, but Lucy also, if you watch, didn't really do anything all of that.
Was Lucy the one that was basically just like pleasuring him?
She was the one who like held the gun to her head. She played Russian roulette.
Okay, yeah.
She was also like the chemist and Lucy were the only two that Red spared.
Yeah.
Right.
Because Lucy was not involved. Like Lucy was the one that was actively kind of like distressed looking when they were burning Mandy, and she didn't physically harm him, or I think she held her up along with Marlena, what's her name?
Don't ask me. I'm terrible.
Yeah, sorry.
Marlene, Mother Marlene.
Yeah, Mother Marlene. I think she like helped her carry her around, but Lucy wasn't actively taking part in assaulting or murdering anybody, and the chemist like empathized with him in the end. So they both got let go. So yeah, they all bought into it, but there were at least a couple.
That's true. I guess when I was thinking like the main member, because like the chemist, you don't really see, at least maybe I didn't notice him until that one moment with the tiger and all that stuff. But you know, Lucy was there, I guess, all the time. But I guess I just put her even as 100% full cult because she was doing everything that she was told.
Of course.
There was no, combat, in verbally or otherwise. It was, she was there. She literally put a gun to her head, played Russian roulette, So
no, she was full
dark.
cult. She was
brainwashed.
Cult. She just wasn't dangerous. Yeah.
Right. That's absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
My next note is something that bothered me about the movie, and I'm sure it's a stylistic choice, but for somebody that doesn't have the best hearing in the world, everyone whispering constantly, like throughout the whole first, basically until the meeting with the guy from Predator, everybody is whispering constantly in the whole movie, and I was really struggling. And since I didn't stream this or have the option for subtitles with the way that I watched this movie, that was difficult for me. A lot of the dialogue I feel like I missed or misheard.
Oh yeah. No, a lot of movies are like that these days. Like I have to watch stuff with subtitles now.
I tried to, but yeah, I didn't unfortunately have the option for this one because we don't endorse the way I watched this movie.
The thing is too, though, the subtitles in this movie kind of tell on itself a bit, though, because a lot of characters speak while they're off screen. And so before you're really introduced to anybody, before you know who they are, if they're talking off screen, the subtitles, at least through Amazon, tell you who's doing the talking. And so you kind of get introduced to characters before the movie intended you to.
Yeah.
Which is a little weird at the same
great.
But like, it's hard though, right? Because if you need the closed captioning because you can't hear, how else do you know who is the person talking if they don't denote that in some way, right? It's like there's not a right answer to that, but it is kind of like a catch-22.
The Shutter subtitles are like that as well.
Yeah. I'm not surprised because like you need that. It needs to be that way. There's not like an alternative I can think of. It's just, it has its own downside. Honestly,
with the way that audio is sometimes, I just wish that subtitles were standard. That's another argument. For another day. But like standardizing subtitles would be a gift.
It should be like in video games where you can like turn down the music but turn up the dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
I would do that.
And you love the music, so that would be a weird thing for you.
Well, the music was actually probably one of my favorite parts of the movie. I thought the music was really well done, which makes it even more sad that the composer died during production. But
yeah,
that's really sad because the movie's dedicated to him. But it's just, the way, Meredith, to your point, the way movies are mixed now, dialogue is difficult to hear unless you have just a crazy setup at home.
There was an article about that recently, and I can't remember off the top of my head where it was. But
that's why sound editing and sound mixing are very important fields.
Yeah.
And they deserve...
No, they really are. And
they deserve better.
Yeah. But it's just, it's anywhere. Like even even at movie theaters, I'm still like, I have no idea what they're even saying.
Yeah, it's because they want to rock the seat. You know, you got to have that Dolby. You know, the Christopher Nolan, the blah, and all that stuff. That's the cool.
I don't want my seat rocked. I want to follow the story.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, luckily in this movie, there really isn't that much story to follow. Yeah. It's about as straightforward. I was kind of hoping that there would be a twist at the end, which we'll get to later. But yeah, it was super straightforward, which was refreshing in some ways. In other ways, I wish it was just there was a couple little somethings along. But yeah, my next note is playing with the window. Because I think, if I remember right, there's like a scene that goes on way too long. Where the cultist guy is like playing with the window.
Yeah. Have you two seen Eraserhead?
Yes.
Probably, but I don't remember it.
So
yes,
this movie to me is what you would get if David Lynch did like gore porn, because it's a very dark horror version of Eraserhead in so many ways. There's a scene in Eraserhead where a character, she's trying to get a suitcase out from under a bed, and she keeps hitting the bed as she's trying to get this suitcase out, and it goes on forever. And I remember yelling at the TV in my dorm room with my roommate when we're watching this movie because I needed her to stop. That's what that scene was.
Yeah, there's also Ghost Story where Rooney Mara it's 5 minutes of Rooney Mara eating a pie.
See, yeah, that's just too much.
Eating a pie on the floor before, like she's grieving and she runs to the bathroom to throw it all up. But
that's another example of like the self-indulgent stuff, I think.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's fine. If some people like that, then more power to them. Obviously, the director did, so it didn't really build any extra tension for me. Like I was trying to figure out what the point of the scene was in terms of like the story and the greater story of the movie and how it's being presented. And I thought maybe they're just trying to build tension or like, I don't know, but I didn't really get that.
To me, it came off as that's how aloof these other cultists are. Like Brother Swan knows what's up, but nobody else, other than what's his face, other than Jeremiah, of course, but the others have no idea really what's going on, what the stakes are, what's really happening. And so, yeah, that guy's just like messing with the window because he couldn't care less. He's just bored sitting in the car, and it goes on way too long. And I think that's just the nature of like digital cinema, because you don't have to pay for the film, right? You can just keep rolling, let him do his thing. But in this case, I think it had to do with just showcasing that they don't know what the stakes are. They're just there.
The Lynch comparison is very apt in this case, I think.
Yeah. An acquired taste.
Well, yeah, and Lynch, one of Lynch's hallmarks is the ability to make the mundane seem really creepy and horrifying.
True.
But I'll be honest, the window going up and down was funny, but like you said, I don't think that the pacing of that scene necessarily worked in the context of this movie.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad we agree on that. I mean, I'm not saying we're not going to agree on anything, but there may not be a lot of things that we agree on in this movie, so it's good to have at least one.
Right, and I hope you don't think that, like, when I disagree with you on something that I'm trying to make you concede to me or anything.
Totally
like,
fine.
I am, though.
Okay, that's fair. But, like, I concede that you interpreted it one way and I interpreted it another.
And that's the beauty of art, right?
Yeah, exactly.
My next note is, of course, there's a demon biker gang. Because I hadn't read the synopsis. I didn't know that there was a demon biker gang in this movie, but somehow when they showed up, it just was like, okay, that's not that crazy for this movie.
And they're cannibals.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of weird because it's implied later that the guy gives them LSD. Mm-hmm. Like that's what the thing is, but then they also want a sacrifice of a person. Yes. So I don't know. It was a weird thing. Yeah. In any case, yeah, it didn't bother me that much that it was a demon biker gang, because of course there is. Why wouldn't there be in this movie?
Right. And like this takes place in 1983, which is like the height, or at least starting to build up to the big satanic panic.
Right.
So I'm just like, that's awesome.
Those kids in their Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I don't know. I thought it was fun. They reminded me a lot, not only, we talked about Cenobites earlier, but if you've ever watched Hobo with a Shotgun, they reminded me of The Plague. the guys that come in, and if you kill one of them in battle, you have to take his place.
Interesting.
And
I got a very
kind of
different
demons.
vibe from them. This probably isn't a good thing. They reminded me of the Wasteland Outlaw people from the Stallone Judge Dredd movie.
I can see that.
I know, Ryan, you hate that movie.
I wouldn't say hate, but like I don't like it.
But you know who I'm talking about, though, right?
Yes, because you made me watch it.
I did. I did. That's true.
I can see that, though. I can definitely see that. Or even something like out of Mad Max.
Yeah.
Mad Max, there's a lot of comparisons that could be made between this and Mad Max, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Pacing is a big one, I think. I had only seen Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, basically the sequels to Mad Max. I had only seen those in like maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I saw Mad Max on a streaming network, and I was like, I'll watch the original. Why not? Instantly regretted it because the movie is super boring for like 2 hours. Then like the last half hour is really exciting. This movie was less boring in the beginning, but it was certainly like very slow paced and, build up to the ending, similar to Mad Max.
When I say Neo Grindhouse, that's one of the things that I mean by that, is that one of the hallmarks of Grindhouse cinema is that you have like an hour or 2 hours, even sometimes. And the climax is only maybe about 20 minutes to 15 minutes of actual action. This was paced better than I think a lot of them, because it still had some horror buildup and things. But a lot of those older movies are like that. Even when Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino did their Grindhouse movies, Death Proof was paced exactly like that too.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. Only the last 20 minutes was when anything picked up, and the first hour and a half was just build up. It was just people sitting around talking in cars.
And lots of foot shots.
Wow, Tarantino. But to this movie's credit, the title card doesn't show up until you're over an hour in.
Yeah.
So the rest is just a prelude.
Apparently. The lighting in this movie is really fun is my next note. I did I do like to find things that are like, I would like to see more of in other movies, people taking creative decisions that are against the norm. And I thought a lot of the lighting, which you've mentioned several times, and, the way they utilize fog and smoke and things like that against the lighting, I thought was really interesting and fun in this movie. Maybe the whole movie as a whole, the story is not super fun based on the horrible things that happen in it, but the lighting was a standout for me for sure.
Oh yeah, it definitely created mood and atmosphere, and it added to the surreality of it.
There were definitely parts I liked from the lighting perspective, like the shot that I'm using as my virtual background towards the end when he's, drenched in blood and he steals the car and he's just like that crazy grinning looking at the imaginary Mandy. But other shots were just really disorienting to me, which I'm sure was on purpose, right? So like when I say that the movie gave me a headache, I know that part of that was the goal, was to create an uncomfortable viewing experience. I think my eyes are just overly sensitive to that, and it was just too much for me.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
It's okay that you feel that way.
When she's drugged, when Mandy gets drugged, right, and like everything's kind of, there's things that are overlaid on each other. And there's the shot where Jeremiah is talking like right at the screen, like it's right framed in his face. And it keeps morphing back and forth between his face and her face. That was just like super unsettling. They did that very well.
It's very nauseating.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah, my next note I think is happening right when that's happening. My next note was I was not mentally prepared for this.
I mean, I could have said that multiple times in this movie.
Sure, but that was the first point where I was like, okay, I wish somebody had warned me of like to get me. I feel like this movie you're supposed to watch while you're doing illicit substances.
Probably.
Which is not, I'm not to say you couldn't enjoy it without that, because I did enjoy it without that, but I feel like it was made with that in mind, because I think to your point of headaches and that kind of thing, I think that would have probably lessened that, and you would have maybe like, I don't know. I'm not a user of those kind of things, so it's hard for me to speak on what that experience would be like, but I definitely felt like I was maybe having some sort of trip, or the closest thing I could have to that without being on drugs while watching this movie, which take that as a compliment or not. But that was definitely a part when I was like, okay, this is happening.
I probably shouldn't be saying this while I'm job hunting, but speaking as somebody who has ingested illicit substances, both consensually and non-consensually, I actually prefer watching it sober.
Fair enough.
Honestly, because I liked being able to watch the details and appreciate the details. And that's not something I could do if I was high or drunk. No, I actually don't even like being high or drunk because I miss those details.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And these scenes are kind of sandwiched together. So like the abduction scene is with all of the flashing, right? Because there's some electrical thing going on, which again led me to believe that there's something beyond human happening here.
Yeah.
But the flashing was so intense. Like that's what really set off my headache issues. And then you've got, once they capture her and they're like drugging her, what is the giant wasp creature that they have stinger in the neck? What the hell was that?
Yeah. Oh my God. That's another thing that it adds to the, is this even real life? Because wasps don't do that.
Like, is that a real bug? Is that a thing that exists?
I don't think so. I don't
was
think
it maybe I'm wrong, but when I saw that scene, I thought that like the wasp was in some sort of liquid.
Yes.
So I feel like maybe the stinger was coated with maybe LSD or something, and when it stung, that was like how they injected it instead of using.
But it was huge. It was like 5,
it was
6
very
inches,
big.
you know, like.
Well, maybe it was one of those Japanese wasps.
Murder hornet.
Yeah.
So I have a bit of arachnophobia, so I don't do well with spiders, but like giant bugs being forced to sting people in necks, that's borderline for me.
See, this is a movie that, again, this is another discussion. Probably one of those movies that could have benefited from content warnings ahead of time, as well as like an epilepsy or migraine warning. Like I get migraines.
Same.
The lighting in this movie is not the type of migraine, is not the type of thing that triggers my migraines, but I would have been like, you know what? I could see this giving someone a migraine. They probably should warn you.
And that's me. So I get migraines as well. And this is the kind of thing that can trigger those for me. So like, yeah, not that it would have stopped me from watching it because we had already had this all planned and all that, but for like an average viewer, it would be nice.
Right.
Especially when it's streaming. Like you could put those tags on and streaming pretty easily. You know.
That's true.
What was I gonna say? Like I get migraines from like Spider-Man movies where he's swinging around. That
like
gives
a vertigo thing.
Yeah, that gives me migraines versus the way that lighting is done.
Gotcha.
So for me, it's more of a motion.
Sure.
Kind of trigger.
Yeah.
My next note is I like his robe, very Star Wars Sith chic.
Sir, that robe looks exactly like the robe Spock wears in Star Trek 3 and 4.
Okay.
Just
it
saying.
Probably actually belongs to Nicolas Cage.
Certainly possible.
Like it probably was just something he had on his own sitting around, and he's like, I'm gonna wear this, and they're like, well, we're not gonna argue with you.
It was wild.
No blinking is freaking me out. I'm not sure which scene that was from though. I feel like maybe that was the scene when the faces were transforming because there was like no blinking happening during that whole scene.
Yeah,
it's done on purpose, obviously, but
very unsettling.
Yeah. And then, okay, am I actually high is my next note.
You're high on life.
Apparently. Right. And then Cultist Dick is the next note because I think at that point he does his like what's the dude from Silence of the Lambs? Except well, I guess he doesn't Bill. Yeah, Buffalo Bill thing, but he doesn't hide, he doesn't do the tuck or whatever it's called. Yeah, that scene did not go the way I anticipated. Like, what's interesting is the stuff that I expect from a movie like this, they either just implied off screen or just completely flipped on its head, like this scene where he does this and her response is to laugh at him, and it just blows everything out of proportion, and like he doesn't go through with his original plan and decides to kill her, and just everything goes off the rails because she's just laughing in his face. I've never seen a movie do that before.
I love that though. I loved that. And I think a lot of it too, like Mandy is obviously very heavily implied to have seen some shit
Yeah.
in her life. They don't explain it, but the very large scar down her face, the discussion of her father murdering baby birds in front of her and her
That was
friends.
just sad.
Like she, I think, had a very abusive and painful and scary upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a guy that's like, anyway, I'm gonna sex you up, baby. You know, she's like, you wrote a song about yourself. Like, what the hell is that all about? You know, maybe that would work on someone like Lucy, who probably hasn't, you know, probably very naive and easy to kind of prey on, but it's not going to work on someone like Mandy. Mandy's lived probably several lifetimes already.
Yep. She has seen stuff.
Right. And that's why I love that it's so unexpected there, because it says there's so much character background and character building, and she doesn't even say anything. She just laughs.
It's true. This dude is a close talker, because when we watched the Punisher Netflix show, I notated this about a character too. I don't know if you remember that, Derek, but because I'm an introvert, like, close talkers are my nightmare. So if you're gonna make a horror movie, having a close talker in there is like that's probably one of the more frightening things you could put in there for me. So like him being yelling. Right there. Even if he's not yelling, he could be whispering, and it would be terrifying to me. Like,
it's almost worse if he's whispering.
Yeah. Well, either way, it's not great.
Like, I think whispering is infinitely scarier than like
because it shows control.
Yep. Whenever I get auditions for, like, when you're supposed to be scary, I usually do at least one take where I just do it like this, and it's quiet, and it's because I'm like, I don't know, that yelling would be fun here, and I'm going to do a take like that, but that doesn't scare me.
No, there's a tension
Yeah.
when you're, you know, even toned and level and almost, you know, just chilled out about the whole thing.
It's like you said, control. Almost blasé in some ways.
We did talk about this a little bit, but why does their house have so many windows? That was my next note. I don't know. I guess that's really when it sunk in, how many windows. And I think this was like when she was about to get burned up.
Yeah. My assumption is they probably knew somebody who owned that house and they could shoot there. That's my guess.
Yeah.
Probably. I mean, and it fits because the guy loves lighting. Having a lot of windows sends, you know, that lends itself well to that.
Yep.
Is this what an existential crisis feels like? I don't remember what was happening in that particular moment. Maybe that was when she was burning. But yeah, somewhere in there, I was like, I have no idea what to expect from this movie at this point, because it's not what I expected it to be at all. And I think it's worth noting at this point, since we are, there's some plot related things we're talking about, and not just notes I made on the movie, that one of the things that I wish had happened in this movie, instead of being such like a point A to point B movie, was that because they didn't show Mandy at all in the bag when they burned her, I thought there was going to be a twist that it was one of the other cultists maybe in the bag, and that Mandy had been converted to the cult, and now Nic Cage, his character Red, has to face that in the end.
Oh, that would have been a really good twist.
Yeah, and maybe they didn't want it to be. I don't think that adds that much of a layer of complication, but maybe they just wanted it to be extremely simple. But I thought throughout the whole movie, I thought that's what it was going to be, you know, the reveal.
Yeah.
Because they show like the burned up corpse, right? But you really only see the skull for like 2 seconds, and then it blows away.
Right.
So
that is interesting. And so, and this scene ends in a way really like, if I only really have one narrative problem with the movie, and that's here, which is they just leave him there. And this is a trope in films like forever, where if the bad guys just killed the good guy, they'd win, right? But because they leave him hanging there, they all die. And that's just...
But this movie is like an homage to that.
I guess, but it does so many other things differently. that this one piece stands out to me as just kind of, it's like the one mainstream thing in the movie. If that makes sense.
That's fair.
I would have rather him had like gotten loose or something and hid in the woods and they couldn't find him or whatever, like that at least would have been like, oh, it's not their fault. They were gonna kill him. But in this case, they're just like, all right, peace out, dude. And then he comes and tears them all down because they don't know who they're messing with. Right. It's very kind of classic blockbuster narrative there.
I guess at least there you can just write it off as, and everyone was on drugs.
Yeah. True.
Perish your judgment, kids.
But it's not like they forgot about him because like the cult leader, Jeremiah, just stares at him for like 2 seconds before they leave. So
yeah, it's like the joke in The Incredibles about monologuing, right? Like that's really what Jeremiah is doing there. He's silently monologuing to Red and then, heads off into the sunset is the idea. And that's just, that's a very blockbuster narrative approach. That's Taken, right? You don't know who you're messing with.
I feel like some of that is just like Ryan said, using genre convention where it's convenient and then subverting it when it's not.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was a much more fancy way of saying that, but I appreciate you saying like Ryan said to make me sound smarter. I'll tell you something that wasn't tropey to the genre that happens next in my notes. He was in his tidy whities through all of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that is tropey to Nic Cage movies because I think in pretty much every Nic Cage movie we've watched so far on this podcast, he's been in his tidy whities at least once.
Well, he's been in his underwear because in The Family Man, he's got the sexy black underwear.
That's true.
So
the boxer briefs.
Yeah, he has been in his underwear, I think, in every movie we've watched.
Yeah.
In fairness, sometimes you just gotta feel the breeze wafting through your leg hairs.
I'm not complaining. Like the dude looks good in his underwear, so go for it. It's not my cup of tea, but fine, sure.
It also makes for a very easy cosplay for people that want to, put something together for Halloween or a convention at the last minute. You just slap on a Tiger t-shirt, put on your tidy whities, and you're good to go.
You know what's funny is at the end of this movie, I was like, Derek should do that costume.
Thanks.
Not the tidy whities. The like when he's all like got the full gear and everything, and he's at the very end of the movie. And that scene that you're like, you have your background there. I thought that would be really fun to just spray you with red blood and fucking everything. Have the vest and the axe.
Are you gonna make me the axe?
I mean, if you pay me, I'll make you anything.
Nice.
What's with it? Oh. WTF Goblin mac and cheese commercial.
Yes! Oh, cheddar goblin.
Yeah, I mean, so to be completely honest, I talked about like the self-indulgent things this movie does. I was 100% okay with this one. Like, I had no idea why the fuck it's in this movie, but I'm there for it.
You like puppets.
It's such a whiplash because he just had probably the worst night of his life. Watched his wife burn in front of him.
And then literally
got by a cult. And then as soon as he gets inside, it's like, what cheddar goblin? Watch him barf up mac and cheese, kid.
So all over kids, yeah. Like,
and then right there, like one of the greatest line deliveries in this entire movie, if not all time, was when he just mutters to himself, cheddar goblin, before having a breakdown in the bathroom. Like, oh, it was hilarious, but also so painful because like, I've dealt with trauma so bad where you're just staring at the weirdest shit. Like to me, this does actually, it does portray what it feels like to be in shock and traumatized very well. Because sometimes trauma makes you just fixate on weird shit like cheddar goblin and when what it feels like to have something just horrible happen to you and you immediately see something that's silly or weird or hilarious and you're just like, what the fuck? And that's when your brain breaks.
It was weird. In the early parts of the commercial, there was a moment where I was like, was this real in the 80s? There was a brief moment where I thought maybe that was a real product that just ended before my time.
But it could have been. Like, that's something that would have been totally, maybe not normal, but it would have fit in and people wouldn't have really thought twice about it. Then we get like the animated zombie dream, which I mean, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that. The animation was really cool on all these dreams. All of his dreams were animated and not like live action. But I really like the animation style and everything that went with it. It kind of took me out of the movie, not in the sense that I don't know. It didn't feel like it was a cohesive part of the movie to me. And when you watch like the Black Freighter version of The Watchmen, right? And you can say whatever you want. A lot of people have mixed feelings on that movie. But with that, it worked for me better than it does in like something like this. And granted, this is much lesser degree than that. But
yeah,
the animated stuff was really cool. I feel like that could have been a really cool story, like separate from the movie. But for me, it just kind of took me out away from whatever was happening in the movie.
It definitely, and this is something that I was talking to Derek about. That to me made it feel very much like a heavy metal movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
but in
fair.
live action, like this is like also wall to wall heavy metal comics.
For sure.
This could have been taken directly out of. And I haven't read a lot of the comics because it's serialized and it's not easy to track down everything. You need to read the full story, but the little bits and pieces that I have read here and there, this would have fit right in.
Yeah.
With a lot of the stories in there. I could even see double headering. Like if we're going to do a double header movie, have this open for the first heavy metal movie.
See, when you mentioned that to me, I was like, all right, like whatever you say, because I hadn't seen this yet, right? And so when the first animated scene happens and I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, okay. Because I've only seen the first two heavy metal movies. That's my heavy metal experience.
There's only two movies, but it's the comics that are like heavily serialized.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So I've seen the animated stuff and I definitely, now I get the connection and everything, but I didn't expect that. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm watching the movie. I'm like, I don't know what she's talking about.
But again, that's the self-indulgent coming in. Like I can understand because having a medium shift like that explicitly shows where the dreams are at like begin and end versus the surreality of everything else. You can't quite like everything in the
dream
movie
look different.
Yeah. How do you make the dream look different? So, because everything is still like a giant question mark, but the one thing that's not are the dreams.
Right, but I mean, the dreams didn't really add anything to the movies for me. Like it was more of the self-indulgent thing. Like they could have cut the dreams out, and they don't need that separation of like how do you make the dreams look different? You don't need that because they didn't add anything to the movie in the sense of the story that the movie was trying to tell. For me,
now one thing I read. I did. So I'm colorblind. And so I didn't notice this, but apparently at some point in like the last animated shot, the color of her eyes change to green. Right.
Yeah.
And that's supposed to symbolize that he has, he has basically what's the word I'm looking for, but more or less as saved her from this damnation that she is supposedly, in. I missed that being colorblind. So maybe that was supposed to be the whole purpose, is that she still exists in this kind of underworld type thing. And while, yes, we're seeing it as his dream, this is just her reality now. And we're supposed to be following her character through that.
One of the interpretations of the ending in the car is that they are both dead and in the underworld together.
So when did he die?
That's the ambiguous part. Perhaps afterward, when he was finished with the roaring rampage of revenge, maybe he died.
He did get stabbed and everything else.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's fair.
Maybe he died in the fire.
Yeah.
There's a lot of places where he could have. He does crush a man's head with his hands.
That was
drugs?
gross.
Is it drugs? Is it surreality? Is it that he dies and that's his, that's like a fever dream that he's fantasizing while he dies? Like that's where the ambiguity comes in. Maybe he died a while back. Maybe the tiger ate him.
Maybe he was dead the whole time, like Sixth Sense.
There you go. He never actually got off the helicopter.
The whole thing was a dream.
Yeah.
Maybe he was the one that died in the bag, and rather than going off on a roaring rampage of revenge, this is Mandy dreaming it as a coping mechanism.
Maybe. It's ambiguous. You never know.
That's what I'm saying. All of these work because they don't hold your hand. So
true.
You gotta come up with these ideas on your own. So.
After the zombie dream, we get the bathroom scene, which we already talked about some, but I don't have a note about this, which I normally do in all these movies so far, I think. But Nic Cage really was good in this, really good.
Yes,
it's so sad.
The scene watching his like wife get burned up, or girlfriend, I don't know if they ever actually say wife, but his significant other get burned up, that watching him cry in that scene was really powerful. The bathroom scene, it was almost funny because like the way it was shot, I feel like they were just told him what they needed to accomplish in this scene and let him kind of do his thing, because at one point the camera's like panning in on him for like, it's a really wide shot and it's like panning in, but there's a shot or a moment where like the camera like backs up just a little bit and then continues going. So I feel like they had no idea what he was going to do, and the cameraman was just trying to survive.
But you know what?
That makes so much more sense.
Yeah, but for a scene like this, man, just tell Nic Cage to go nuts.
I mean, could you have asked for something better for Nic Cage
no,
to do? That's that's where he lives.
And I mean, again, that's the fact that he's in his underwear the whole time, and that's not fun. It's not funny.
No, it was
funny at all. It was vulnerable.
Funny
oh, sorry, go ahead.
It was funny in the earlier. It was just, I guess it was funny for me because I didn't realize that this whole time he was in his underwear. So when he wanders into the house,
yeah,
I'm like, holy shit, he was in his tighty whities the whole time. But yes, in this scene, certainly not funny, and not a joke.
Like and that's a testament to how arresting this scene is that yes, there is a bit of visual humor when he's in his underwear, but not that scene. It's just sad, and it's vulnerable, and it's painful, and it's wrenching. And it's probably, I know that I talk a lot about the chainsaw fight because hell yeah, chainsaw fight, but like this is my other favorite scene in the movie.
Yeah, I think this is a lot of people's favorite scene in the movie, because I've seen a lot of people talking about this scene specifically before I had seen it.
Yeah, it's the most human.
I think it's probably the most cagey scene, if we're going off our cagey scale or whatever, in the movie. It's like, there's a lot of caginess in this movie, but I think that was the one where they were just like, do your thing, man. We're not going to impede you.
Yeah.
Get creative.
And I'm so glad you brought it up, though, because the camera thing I noticed, and in my head, it was very disorienting the way that it would move in and out and tilt. It was very strange, but the rest of the movie's not shot like that. It was just that one scene, and your explanation makes it make sense.
Yeah. It's just so sad.
It is very sad. Now, Nic Cage nails it in this movie. Like this is a weird ass movie, but he is very good.
Right. And see that scene there were so many ways that scene could have gone wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think you'll say similar things about Pig, Derek, when we watch that. Is that it's a
Pig.
weird movie, not in a different sense than this one, but he's also very good in that. I think that one was probably a little bit more of a critical darling than this movie is, but
yeah.
I love Pig, and like it's not a spoiler to say that he can say, "I don't fuck my pig," and it's not funny.
Yeah.
He can say that absolutely ridiculous line and deliver it in a way where you're not laughing.
Right. Yeah, and I think like this movie and Pig, which we haven't talked about on the podcast yet, so I'm not going to get into, but they're both, he's really, and with Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, he's really had a good, like, I don't want to say renaissance, because he had like several kind of comebacks, but the past few years with him have been very good. Fans have been eating well.
He's picked some really good material.
For sure.
Recently, and like, Pig was one of my favorite movies last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
And it was great. And Mandy is obviously one of my all-time favorites. Pig, I think, did not win Best Movie of the Year because it was the same year that Psycho Goreman came out. And, I mean, another favorite. Doesn't have Nicolas Cage, so not relevant to the conversation.
So it doesn't count.
Doesn't count.
My next note is, of course, he is a blacksmith, because he goes and talks to the Predator guy.
His name is Bill Duke.
The guy from Predator. And this is when I kind of noticed that, well, I probably should have noticed it earlier. Maybe I'm just not that observant, but that they picked I don't want to say this in a way that seems like insulting to people, but they picked people that have very specific looks. Like you're not getting necessarily the most traditionally good looking people in these roles. You're getting people that maybe their appearance is a little unsettling if you frame them a certain way. You know, there are a lot of like very long faces on people that they accentuate with the way the movie is shot. And Bill Duke was not an exception to this. He was chosen for a very specific look as well. And not to say he's not a good actor, because he is a tremendous actor. But
well, it's also it speaks to location and circumstances too. These are people living a hard scrabble existence in the wilderness.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
But also something that I really liked about that character, Carruthers, he's the only one that doesn't get any kind of surrealist lighting, which probably shows that he's the most like well-adjusted and normal person in the entire story.
That's interesting.
See, I took it more as like, this is the point when the movie goes from being one thing to being another thing. Because this movie is kind of like watching two different movies in
that's
succession. But I mean, neither is wrong. It could go either way.
Right.
But yeah, for me, this was like, it was meant to be a transition point. So at least in my mind. So they, got rid of all the surreal stuff, and it was just like a very down to earth, discussion between two people.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not down to earth, it's probably grounded. Maybe it's a better term. There was not like, things that are open to interpretation or anything in the scene. It's very cut and dry as to exactly what this scene is. And so for me, it was like a marked transition. This was the movie that I thought I was signing up for post this point. The movie pre this point, I had no idea what I was signing up for, but what it was not this, and that's not a negative.
Right. It was a domestic drama that built up into a fever dream revenge fantasy.
Right, exactly. And I've seen a lot of people, and I think even it's been referred to even in this podcast as gore porn, but I didn't really get that vibe from it. I mean, if you watch like a Saw movie, that's gore porn.
Yeah.
But this movie was not really good. Like, I didn't even think the gore was that crazy in this movie compared to a lot of movies that come out. So, I mean, there's a lot of blood, but I felt like that was more of like an Evil Dead homage or like a slasher movie homage than anything else. I had to get that out there. I guess I could have said that earlier.
Well,
but
I feel like gore porn, you're kind of meant to, I guess, fetishize and relish in the violence and
right.
This. Yeah, of course it does, but it's revenge, and with all the build up to that point, the stakes are different.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
You can understand why it gets to that point. I don't know. Maybe I'm just justifying it. But the thing is, I'll still enjoy a good gore porn movie if it's done well.
I think for me, the reason I classified it that way is probably not particularly fair. It's not my take; it's IMDb's take, because they have a parent's guide section where they rank different things, right? And violence and gore was put to severe. And I guess in my head, which is funny because like at the same time, like profanity is moderate. It's like they don't curse a lot, but they'll hack each other up. I thought that was just kind of an interesting way to look at it.
Well, in fairness, this is the United States. There's people that are like, oh, I don't mind if my child watches a disembowelment, but I just draw the line when they say too many swears. Like that's such an American perspective. So like, I get it.
That was a very specific accent for that.
It was.
And my next note is that axe is amazing because Meredith, you may not know this about me, and our listeners may not, although I brought it up a few times, that I'm a prop maker, like, as a hobbyist.
Oh, that's awesome!
And so, like, I really appreciate, and a prop collector. I have a lot of movie props in my
so
collection.
Cool.
So, but I really appreciate when, like, a prop is really well made and, like, unique. And this axe was, like, super cool. So, like, regardless of whether I liked this movie or not, I would have looked at that axe and gone, I want one of those in my living room.
I was reading that apparently it's meant to look like Celtic Frost's logo.
Yeah, I read that too. I didn't get that.
I didn't get that from it either, but it's cool.
It's very cool.
And I don't listen to a lot of metal. I don't dislike metal. I just don't always know where to start with it. But I was like, that's a really awesome detail.
My question for this is, did the mold already exist, or did he have to make the mold first?
That's a little ambiguous. Yeah, like, again, as somebody who like makes props and like does this kind of stuff, he would have spent the amount of time he would have had to spend if he didn't have, even if he did have that mold, there would have had to been a tremendous amount of time spent to make it look the way it did, because metal, when you pour it into a mold, does not look like that. I mean,
Right.
the amount of time, and this was like mirror sheen, right? Like you can shine up a piece of metal relatively easily if you have the right tools, but this was like mirror sheen on both sides. So to be able to get that level, he would have had to have been working on that thing for a while. My my heart is telling me that he did not have the mold already, and that it's implied that he made this mold also. But it's not really. There's no real reason that they would have needed to include that detail in the movie.
Not.
But for somebody like me, I want to know. But yeah, that was a cool scene. It didn't really make a lot of sense to me that he was also a blacksmith hobbyist. Like, that's not really something I put with Lumberjack. He also didn't have like they didn't establish earlier that he had any kind of a forge or like metalworking experience. So that was just kind of out of the blue, and that's fine. It didn't bother me that much, but it was a very cool scene. I always love seeing somebody like make their own weapon.
This is a one-man D&D campaign, and
exactly.
He's the barbarian who put a couple of points in metallurgy.
There you go. I mean, I took it as like, this is a movie set in the 80s, so I like a kind of MacGyver meets Rambo meets, there's several different things in the 80s where the character hasn't been shown to have any kind of skill building something. Maybe MacGyver wasn't a great example, but like Rambo builds like explosive arrows and stuff like that. And there's not really any kind of established anything in that movie, at least from my memory, that says that he would know how to do this other than generic special forces training.
Yeah, I was going to say it still could have been the implication that he probably served in Vietnam.
There you go. Yeah, but I don't know that they were making a lot of metal axes and molds in Vietnam.
Probably not.
I wasn't there.
But if you were Nicolas Cage, you probably would.
Sure, it's an act like this part of the movie. At this point, it becomes kind of not a generic '80s action movie, but definitely takes some inspiration from that, which is more my wheelhouse. That's why I enjoyed this part of the movie significantly more than the earlier part. But that was definitely the start for me, where I was like, okay, I want to see this axe in action. And you get to. Spoiler alert.
You do, but it was a bit like you're immediately kind of knocked off kilter, though, because he's immediately captured.
Yeah. That's true.
Which I was like, I think I was bummed.
I think the scene where he's captured and he has to like escape the capture and he has the nail through his hand, that was like getting a little gore porny. That anytime you have like an up close shot of some like body part that's been damaged in some way and they have to damage that body part further to escape, that starts to become kind of gore porny. But it was fine. It didn't bother me. It was, but that if somebody was going to classify this as gore porn, that would be like one of the scenes that they bring up as evidence.
I also really like that he gets really angry about his shirt being torn.
There's a line.
That's the really big, you ripped my shirt, not like you killed my wife, or like you stabbed me through the mouth and hands with barbed wires.
I mean, we've all had clothing that we like, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'd be mad if something got torn too, if I really liked it. Or I think his significant other was wearing that at one point in the movie.
She was.
So, it had some other context to it there at least.
Yeah.
My next one says blood in the mouth, which is super gross, but I love it. And that's like, I got a lot of Evil Dead, like Bruce Campbell vibes from that scene. And there's a lot of that kind of throughout this movie. Nic Cage and Bruce Campbell have some similar stuff going on.
Yeah.
I think they have similar strengths in their acting.
Yeah. And I would watch this movie with Bruce Campbell in the Nicolas Cage role for sure. I think that we would get a very different bathroom scene, but I don't think it would be bad because Bruce Campbell always shows up understanding the assignment.
That's true. So. Yeah, and me and Derek, we love Bruce Campbell.
Oh yeah,
always.
I'm a big fan too.
I got to meet him a few years ago, and he was delightful in person as well. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, he's a wonderful guy. But to your point, I was thinking in this movie that they had to have had Nic Cage in mind when they did this. Because, I mean, I was struggling to think, even Bruce Campbell, God love him, I love him, whoever loves him, everybody loves him. I don't think he would have been as successful in this role as Nic Cage was. And I can't think of any other actor that would have been even close.
I think as many people would have watched it if Bruce Campbell was in it, because I love Bruce Campbell too. but Bruce Campbell relishes the fact that he's more of a cult figure than an A-list actor like Nicolas Cage. I mean, he wrote multiple books on the subject.
Yeah, that's true.
That's where Bruce Campbell lives, because that's where Bruce Campbell loves to live.
Yeah.
Whereas Nic Cage he's like, this is a thing I like and I'm going to do it.
Well, and he'll play it straight. Like,
yeah.
I think the difference is that Nic Cage plays it straight and it comes across a lot of the time as cheesy or, over the top. Whereas Bruce Campbell specifically tries to play it over the top.
Mm-hmm.
And so it definitely comes across a different way. But
I still think he would have worked really well. It would have been very different. But I still think he could have made it work.
I don't think it would have been what they were going for with the movie.
Not at this point. I think Bruce would have had to have been younger. Because as Cage has gotten older, his ability to do something like this hasn't really changed, right? He still comes off as a very powerful, aggressive type person. Bruce, he's aged differently. And I just don't see him being able to take on the mantle of a role like this today. Yeah, maybe 15 years ago.
Yeah, it'd be a tougher sell today for sure.
Yeah.
My next note is, did he just do cocaine, followed by, did he just do crazy LSD?
Yes.
Yes.
So the answer is yes to both of those things. And then Golden Gun.
Yeah, I noticed that was interesting.
I'm not sure, what I feel like that had to be done for a purposeful reason, and maybe I'm just not as well versed in the movies that inspired this as I should be, but that seemed a little extravagant for what this movie was going for. So Meredith, you have obviously way more experience with that kind of stuff than I do, so maybe you know where that comes from.
I don't actually. Okay. I'm sorry.
Maybe it doesn't come from anything.
Usually anything that I didn't pick up on or no, I was just like, Nicolas Cage. That was his idea.
Yeah, maybe. He does use golden guns in other movies, but
yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, he's done it a couple of times. There's the obvious James Bond reference, but that has nothing to do with the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Except that, I guess maybe an argument could be made that the chemist's character is kind of a departure from the rest of the movie as well. And I don't know. That's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
I don't have a good answer for you.
I don't, and I mean, it's
okay that there's no answer.
It would not surprise me if it's a reference to a super popular movie that I haven't seen.
I feel like one of us would have seen it if it was that popular, though, right?
Yeah.
Even Face Off I'm pretty sure they were using gold. At least Castor Troy was using gold guns in that movie, but this was a different kind of gun.
Weren't there golden gun references in?
In Unbearable Weight, but that was a reference to Face Off.
Those are his Face Off guns. This was a different gun. Maybe it was supposed to be like an homage to that.
Could be. It could mean nothing.
But he never actually gets the gun. It'd be different if he ended up with the gun, right? Because then it's like this little character connection. Because he has that. He's got tracks that are in multiple of his movies and things like that.
Right.
But he never gets the gun. So
it's fine. We don't need to develop on the gun anymore. I thought maybe there was something I had missed in another Grindhouse or something else from this director.
It probably, like I said, I have weird blind spots of popular movies that I haven't seen. And it's not because I eschew popular movies, because obviously I watch Marvel stuff. A lot of it has to do with accessibility. So if there's an indie movie that I have no idea when it's going to be taken off streaming next, and if I'm ever going to get an opportunity to see it again, I'm going to be like, okay, it's easier for me to find these bigger blockbustery mainstream movies than it is for me to sometimes to find the smaller movies. So I'm going to watch the smaller movie because I may never get an opportunity again.
That's fair.
And that's how I've ended up missing a lot of big movies. It's not like a snob thing. It's not a it's not an affectation. Right. It's not an affectation. It's literally just when will the opportunity arise again? And it's much easier for me to find Marvel movies and things than it is for me to find smaller movies. We talked about how Mandy's not always the easiest to find.
Yep.
Absolutely. A lot of Nic Cage movies that we reviewed, unfortunately, have been kind of tricky they aren't on any of the main streaming networks, so we're used to it.
Yeah, Tubi and Freevee.
Next I had, is he going to fight a tiger? Because I thought that we were going to get a fucking cool him destroying it. Not that I want to see tigers get killed, but in a fictional movie that's an action slasher, it wouldn't be that crazy to see him fight a tiger, but we didn't get to see that, so I was sad about that.
Seems like the tiger sympathized with Red too, as much as
the
chemist. He's like, you know what? This guy's been through enough shit. He doesn't need me to add to it. You have fun and good luck, friend.
Or maybe it was, I don't want to die because that axe looks scary.
Yeah.
Supposedly it was supposed to be a lizard in the script. And then when they showed up on set, they were like, yeah, we have a tiger now.
That tracks.
So they shot it with the tiger.
It's probably a similar budget for a lizard and a tiger.
I guess it depends on the lizard.
Well, yeah, I imagine that a Komodo dragon would probably be,
yeah.
I mean, it's not tiger sized, but I imagine they're probably not cheap to haul around or easy to train.
No, I would imagine not.
Where the fuck is he was my next note, which was because maybe it's not ambiguous. I thought it was ambiguous, but I could have missed something in the sense of where this in the world this takes place and like what looks, because what place they go specifically looked like basically hell mixed with a rock quarry.
Yes.
Yeah,
I agree.
They're in California.
What?
Okay.
Yeah, they're in the Shadow Mountains in California.
Okay.
That's what it says in the beginning, Shadow Mountains. It's kind of like a wooded area near a desert, which is, a lot of the culty stuff that takes place in the desert. So you kind of got this folk horror, desert horror.
It just seemed to switch environments a lot. So like, and that makes sense if that area has a lot of different biomes, I guess. But
yeah,
and if you're not familiar with that area, then it just seems really weird. And I mean, it was cool. It was a really cool place for the ending, to happen. But it was a little odd because it just looks so different than everything else in the movie.
Well, especially at the end when he's leaving and they have, they show the sky and everything because the rocks are so jagged and like shooting out into the sky that like it does give off the sense of it being unearthly.
Mm-hmm.
Which is probably what they were going for, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, also, it's just to kind of drive home the Charles Manson stuff, setting it in California.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even think about it.
Why was he washing a car in a rock quarry?
The guy was just like anything else. I don't know.
The guy was just like washing. It was just a really odd choice of things for the cultists to be doing.
I figured they're bored, right? I think that goes back to the window thing, right? Like they don't really get the gravity of the situation. They have no idea what's really going on. This dude's got a nice car and nothing else to do.
And he probably doesn't see Red as that much of a threat. Like,
well, he doesn't know Red's alive.
Fucking guy. Oh, that's true.
Right.
But even then, they didn't see him as much of a threat because they just left him there.
Right. Yeah. So like, I just think they don't have a care in the world, and that's probably like his only real possession is his car.
That's fair. It just was a little weird, as somebody is a car guy also, just like that's not the ideal place to wash a car. Yeah. In general.
The way they were shooting it though, because they were shooting across the hood of the car, right? And I really expected the axe to come slamming into the hood of the car. That's what I expected the shot to end with, but that obviously didn't happen.
That actually would have been really cool.
But we did get an awesome axe throw after that.
That's true.
So, forgivable. And then we had the chainsaw battle, which Meredith
chainsaw fight loves. Angel chorus on the chainsaw fight. So good. I love that scene.
When the dude pulls out the bigger chainsaw.
Yeah.
That made me laugh. That was the most like legitimate chuckle that the movie got out of me the whole time.
I also love it because it's awkward. because it's a cool looking weapon, but it's an awful weapon. Right? It's awful for fighting. So I kind of love that it's an awesome scene, but it does show how horrible and impractical a chainsaw weapon is unless you are Bruce Campbell when you have a chainsaw for a hand. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was hoping that was what was going to happen. He's going to get his hand chopped off and then put the extra long chainsaw on his hand.
Extra long one.
In fairness, nobody can do that like Bruce Campbell. We talk about how Nicolas Cage nailed that crying in the, crying in the bathroom scene, but
leave the chainsaw work to the professionals.
No one does chainsaw hand like Bruce Campbell.
That's true.
I do like the idea that this movie's core message is that chainsaws are just not good weapons.
No.
That's the real takeaway.
I was trying to find like a deeper meaning and like in the way the this was all done, like maybe that him having the smaller chainsaw and the other guy having the larger chainsaw was like a metaphor for male insecurity in the size of things.
No, but sometimes the chainsaw is just a chainsaw.
And maybe it is. And I was trying to read, I don't know. I was
got
trying
some ink blots to show you later.
There was some things in this movie that I was just like, am I too dumb for this movie? Like,
no, that's the thing. And that's part of why I think I really like grindhousey movies and neo grindhouse stuff is it's not, you don't have to go digging.
Well, you have to admit the first like 2/3 of the movie that there was a lot of like symbolism and like, things that if you maybe weren't as savvy of a film viewer that you probably would miss out a lot. Like you mentioned the alcoholism and, there's a lot of other things like that where if you're maybe not as savvy, you're going to miss out. You're not going to really get what the full context of the movie is.
At the same time, I have seen this many times, and it picked up on that. The first time I saw this, I was like, chainsaw fight! I am not even going to pretend that I picked up on that initially because I was so enamored of the chainsaw fighting.
Maybe, Ryan, you and I have spent too much time watching like superhero flicks.
Maybe I don't think there is such a thing. That's too much time. I mean, I think that's something about like kind of indie art house films that is another thing that's tough for me to swallow is I feel like they're made so that the person that's watching them feels smart of some of them. And I'm not meaning that to insult anybody that enjoys those, including you, Meredith. I
don't feel insulted because
okay,
I think here's the thing. Yeah, I love these kinds of movies. But I'm not going to pretend that they're lacking in pretense or that people do watch it and use it as a replacement for a personality.
That's absolutely true.
Well, you didn't understand this hidden meaning. And that's bullshit. Here, this is a rant that Jake and I go off on, and if you'll permit me, highbrow, middlebrow, and lowbrow is a bunch of bullshit. It is absolute bullshit. It has its roots in like super racist phrenology nonsense. But like a good movie is a good movie. It doesn't matter if it has enough layers of symbolism to hit the core of the earth or if it's as shallow as a puddle of water. Who gives a shit? Is it good? Does it bring you joy? Like, geez, some of my favorite movies are the Bill and Ted movies. They're so fun because they're so full of joy and life. But nobody's going to write a doctoral dissertation on Bill and Ted. And that's awesome. I don't care. So that's the philosophy that I bring to film here is that, yeah, I will gladly take out a jackhammer and start digging into movies because I'm a nerd. I like that kind of thing. But I don't expect other people to like that kind of thing or care about that kind of thing. What brings me joy? But totally if someone doesn't want to put in that work or isn't interested in doing the work, who gives a shit? That's how I see it. So
it's just an easy way for me to not like a movie is if I feel like it was if I feel like I don't get it because I'm too dumb, then that's an easy way. And I didn't fully get quite there with this movie. So, it's safe. Like I said, I enjoyed this movie.
Right. But you know what? You're also not dumb.
Well, you don't know me well enough to make that judgment, but I appreciate the fact that you're saying that on record.
Ryan, you're not dumb.
Like I said,
but then why should I feel dumb when I'm watching a movie? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm with you there. Look, I felt like a lot of this was way over my head as well.
Sometimes you just want to watch a chainsaw fight.
Right. And unfortunately, that's like an hour and 15 minutes or something, or hour 30 minutes into this movie. So, and it's very short, really, compared to other things in the movie. So if that's what you're watching the movie for, I mean, you could just probably skip to like an hour and a half in. You'll miss some cool stuff, but you know.
Yeah,
Just
but
skip
I
to
mean,
the title card.
yeah, you can watch the scene where Nicolas Cage cries in a bathroom in his underwear, and then you can watch the chainsaw fight. And if that's all you see, you've seen the highlights.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe watch the scene with the cultist and the Mandy's face, like, because then you'll feel high, even if you're not. Uh,
Yeah,
what
it's
is
it's a good safe way to get your, to start tripping balls if you have a drug test the next day.
What is he doing to that wall is my next note, because the cultist Jeremiah is like on the wall, like slithering around, and it was very weird.
I assumed it was drugs.
Yeah, and that's probably the answer for most things in this movie. And then offered a BJ as a last resort to survive. I thought that was an interesting choice, but I mean, I guess it shows how desperate the guy was, or is meant to.
And I mean, he's a coward. He doesn't even put up a fight.
Yeah, that's true.
And I really thought that was an interesting stylistic choice that I liked, was that the final fight was just the main bad guy folding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Completely. I love that because it shows that so many bad guys they've got their mooks and their hench people, and then they're the big final fight, the strongest enemy that you will be fighting. And half the time I'm like, well, then why didn't you just go first and wipe this guy out like the first time?
Yeah.
If you're the strongest, why aren't you the first one out? This logically makes a lot more sense. Why do you send your strongest people out first? Why do you have them do the dirty work? Because he's a coward. And that makes so much more sense.
That is an interesting way of looking at it, because I was a little surprised that he went after the biker gang first, right? Because I felt like, well, the cultists, they're the ones who burned her alive. Like, wouldn't that be the first people you'd go to? But no, he goes through the bikers first, and then he's left with these mostly incompetent people.
Right, because you don't want the incompetent people to call in the cavalry.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, because he wants the drop on the bikers. And if he goes after the cultist first, the bikers are going to get the drop on him. Like I said, he uses guerrilla tactics to get the advantage.
He does.
It's true.
So he crushes Jeremiah's head, and I think that was pretty gross. Like his eyeball popped out.
Yeah, but also it looked like that scene reminded me of Total Recall, but with blood.
Yes.
And I liked that because it looked like they used practical effects there, and it
always a plus.
So well. Oh, it looked great.
The movie looked pretty good.
Yeah, there weren't any spots where I was like, this CG doesn't look good. But I think it's also really easy to hide that kind of CG when you have like this film grain aesthetic over the whole thing, and smoke and lighting everywhere.
I don't know if they had money for CG. The whole budget was only $6 million.
Sure, but I mean, it wasn't shot on film, so they clearly did some processing.
Yeah.
It was probably just some very, very, very basic CG post-processing touch.
Yeah, I'm sure. My second to the last note is, did he just come? I'm not sure if that was when he got the head crushed, or like when he crushed the guy's head. There's like a scene where he looks like he's coming, or I don't really remember the context of that.
Yeah, that was weird.
You know what?
Hey,
ambiguous.
Man.
We're just gonna say
whatever works for you. Whatever floats your boat. My last note is the background you have there, Derek, the smiling covered in bloodshot. That is, if I had to like take a photo from a Nic Cage movie and say, this is what you can expect with this actor, that would probably be in my top 5.
So yeah, this is at the end when he steals the car and he's driving off, and he sees Mandy in the seat next to him, for those who can't see my background. And he's covered in blood. They get the red lights going, which was prominent throughout a good chunk of the film. He's wild. Like his teeth are showing, like he's got this crazed grin, and his eyes are wide, and it's intense.
It's amazing though. Like I know that it's funny if you see it out of context, but there's so much catharsis and relief. And is he hallucinating? He doesn't give a fuck. Is Mandy really there escorting him down to hell? Is he just seeing her as a ghost? Is he an alien? He doesn't care. Nicolas Cage doesn't care. He did what he set out to do, and he's relieved. And oh my God, I love that shot so much. Like this kind of this kind of movie and that kind of character are why I went into acting in the first place.
Well, there you go.
Like that probably sounds weird, but like I really kind of decided, yeah, I want to kind of do this professionally when I watched Army of Darkness in a theater class when my teacher didn't feel like teaching. And I was like, I want to do this. And like
Yeah.
like looking at that scene, there's no fucking words. He acts completely with his face and it's gorgeous. And there's that flashback to when he met Mandy for the first time.
Mm-hmm. That was cute.
As well.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like just so this it's the release valve.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a catharsis. It's not like something like Midsummer where there is no, or just any Ari Aster movie actually, now that you think about it, there is never the cathartic ending. Everything that Ari Aster makes ends on a tense and high and anxious note. And I like it. I love it. I love him for it. I loved Hereditary. I love Midsummer. Like, these are not insults, but this is different. This movie, and again, hearkening back to genre convention, it needs to have that cathartic ending to work.
This is one of those endings, though, where I kind of just want to see, like, what did he do the next day? What was that like? You know, because at some point he's going home, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's got to take a shower, I would imagine, at this point. And then what do you do? Because, like, the whole thing happened at his house. So I guess he's going to move, but he's still a logger. I don't know. I always wonder, like, maybe what the next day is.
Maybe this is the prequel to Drive Angry. I never saw Drive Angry, but he is driving. And I can imagine he's probably going to be angry once the adrenaline wears off.
Fair. And the drugs.
Yeah. There we go. It's just it's a prequel to Drive Angry. I don't know if you've watched that one yet. I haven't seen it.
No, it has not popped up yet. Not yet. But that's it. That's it. The credits are basically silent. There's no music. And then we get a post-credit shot that's some hand sketches of things from the film. And then the movie's over.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's the whole thing. Now, this episode, we haven't had a guest on before, so we've kind of gone a little longer than we normally do.
Yes, apologies.
No, it's okay.
I love talking about movies.
No, it's all good. It's all good. But we should probably wrap things up at this point, unless, Ryan, you have any more notes that we didn't get to.
That's it.
That's it?
Yep.
Okay. So that's the movie in a nutshell. And we need to kind of rate the film. So, Ryan, since you've done this before, on our Cage-o-meter, where would you rank the quality of this film?
It's a tough one for me because I did enjoy it, but I feel like this is one of those movies where you either give it like a 5-star or you give it a 1-star. There's not a lot of in between, which it sounds weird, especially because I'm about to give it a 3-star or somewhere in there. But, you know,
we have a 20-point scale.
Yes,
over here,
I'm aware.
so,
you know what I'm saying, though, like somewhere in the middle. I think in general, this movie, you know, it's hard to say quality. This is a great quality movie because you talk to somebody else and they're going to say this movie was crap. I don't understand the point of it, you know, whatever. For me, I think I would put it at like somewhere around a 15 or a 16. I think that it was really well done for what it was trying to do. And whether that worked for me or not in all the given circumstances, but I think it was a highlight of the movies we've watched so far on this podcast. So I'd put it pretty high up there.
So that's really interesting. So I was going to give it a 16.
Okay.
For basically the same reasons. This is a very difficult movie for me to watch. It is not a comfortable film, but all of that's on purpose. All of that's intentional, right? And so I think everything it sets out to do, it does extremely well. You just might not be happy with what it's trying to do, right, as a viewer. But that doesn't mean that it's a bad movie. It just means it's not for you. So for me, I can't watch this again just because I don't want to put myself through the headaches, literally. But it doesn't mean that it was bad. It executes across the board. So I'm going to give it a 16. Meredith, what would you give it?
5 million.
Well, you can give it up to 20.
Okay, fine. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 20, but like I said at the very beginning, I am the target audience for this kind of movie. So there's a chainsaw fight. Like I'm such an easy sell on this kind of thing.
That's
So
fair.
I'm
That's
going to
fair.
say a 20, but I'm also going to agree with the both of you saying that not everything is for everybody. And that something can still be high quality and not for you. So just because I say it's a 20, I fully admit that's because I'm so biased in favor of so many things in this movie
That's fair.
and how they do those things well. It is, I think, on a technical and objectively storytelling level is very accomplished, but my 20 is for taste alone.
That's fair. All right, so now we've got our caginess, and this one's a little bit harder for me. So we're just gonna go in the same order again. So
Except
Ryan,
that you always start on the caginess one. You're just doing this because you don't want the pressure, but then you put it on me instead.
Well,
so
you
why
can
don't
lead
you
the
lead
next
us?
episode then. All right, fine. So the caginess is a little bit tough here because the final shot of him in the car is definitely very cagey. The bathroom scene is very cagey, and I'm looking back at some of my previous scores, and I think I have to put it somewhere between Leaving Las Vegas and The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. I don't think that it's more than Unbearable Weight. I do think it's maybe a little more cagey than Leaving Las Vegas. I think he's a little more subdued in that. So I'm going to also give it a 16.
Okay. I was going to give it a 17 for caginess because I think that it's, I think that, there's more than just those two scenes and that he was very much in his wheelhouse in this movie. So maybe even the like more subtle scenes by comparison seemed not as cagey if you just viewed those in outside of the context of the movie, they would seem more cagey. So I think that, because of the extremes you get to in this one, that it could seem less, I don't know, maybe I might be going off on a tangent there, or not explaining myself very well, but I'd be around a 17 for this one. I think that he was really, really in his element in this one. And I loved a lot of that.
Fair. Very fair. Meredith.
Yeah, I'm probably going to put it around a 17 as well because in this, I think that people who don't watch it only think that meme Cage shows up, but like dramatic actor, holy fuck, I'm crying along with you, Cage, also shows up. So it goes like with what Ryan said. You get, despite how straightforward this movie is and the genre type, and the fact that it's kind of marketed as meme Cage, you still get very, very like regular drama ass Cage. And I like that. I really like that. I like that this movie takes advantage of his ability to do dramatic heft instead of only turning this into a revenge fantasy.
That's fair.
I think that it's well balanced like that. And yeah, but it's still because we get meme Cage, it's still very cagey.
Yeah.
But I would also put this is kind of like a surrealist and heightened version of Pig, which I know you haven't seen yet, Derek.
I have not.
But he's a lot more subdued in Pig, but I could very easily see his character from Pig in this movie and vice versa.
Interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing Pig. So we'll see if I remember that when we get to it. It is on the wheel. So
I'm curious to see your take, Ryan. I'm curious to know if you agree with me on that or not, considering you have seen Pig. Would you see the characters in this and in both movies as very similar?
Yes, but I think it's yes. I mean, yes is the ultimate answer, but I think that because of the way they're very different films. So It's like two different characters, or it's like the same character taken by two different directors and with two different stories, So yes, I can see a lot of carryover between the two characters.
Here's a good way to put it between the two movies. It's like you gave two creative writing students a character and said, work with this.
Yeah.
And one student gave you Pig and another student gave you Mandy.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Very
there's definitely
interesting.
some similarities there.
All right, well, we have one more thing to do tonight. So Mandy is officially off our wheel o cage because obviously we talked about it. So now we have to find a movie that will replace it on the wheel. And that movie is going to be The Humanity Bureau.
Oh, I've never heard of that one.
There's probably a good reason for that.
The Humanity Bureau. Yeah, that one is yeah, that's an interesting movie. We will add that then to our wheel. That's a 2017 film of his, The Humanity Bureau. So that goes on the wheel o cage. To find out what movie we talk about next, you'll have to watch our spin. Go to comingofcage.com and you can see our spins for the wheel and find out what we're going to be talking about next. Because we don't normally have guests, we don't usually do this piece, Meredith, but if people wanted to find any of your works or your show or anything like that, how could people find you?
Yeah, so the easiest way to find me and what I've been up to is my Twitter, at Meredith Nudo, MEredithNudo. That's usually where I talk about the projects that I'm working on. Actually, that's just where I talk about the projects that I'm working on and high cholesterol and Texas politics. That's where I think that's a nice hub, as it were. And
Sure.
then my podcast is Pop Schlock Pod, or Pop and Schlock Pod. And then Pop Schlock Pod is the Twitter. That is run by my creative partner, Jacob King. He is awesome. He is a wrestling promoter. So a lot of the Twitter feed and a lot of our episodes, he talks about his experience as a wrestling promoter and commentator, which is awesome. I still have yet to actually see him live doing his commentary, but he's great, wonderful human being. I love working with him. The most recent movie that we covered, actually it wasn't even a movie, we talked about Our Flag Means Death. Oh, sure. Which we loved. And then coming up next, it's going to be Prey when we can get our schedules to align, which I loved Prey. Pretty sure he loved Prey. So
awesome.
I think that's the best place to find it.
Sounds great. And we'll include your Twitter handle and stuff in our show notes, of course. Ryan, do you want to give out yours? We don't really give out our stuff on this show, but we used to. Do you want to?
Not especially, no.
No, not especially. Okay.
No, but I mean, I'm not hard to find. I tag Screen Heroes. I'm so used to I tag Coming of Cage in that's relevant tweets, so I'm not hard to find.
Well, if you need props, and costuming type things, go find Buster Props.
There you go.
We'll plug
that's
your
so
business
cool.
there, Ryan.
I want to see your stuff. Like that's
well,
such
I don't really
awesome.
Do a lot on social media with it these days, unfortunately, but we're still pretty busy. I just don't share a lot about it. So, but yeah, you can find me there.
You got an Etsy.
That's true.
You can see.
But we don't post our really fun stuff on Etsy. That stuff is mostly in private.
Yeah. But yeah, you can find me, Derek VO, on Twitter. We are the Coming of Cage podcast at Coming of Cage or comingofcage.com for all of our cool stuff for that. Meredith, thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you.
It was an honor. I really appreciate it. Sorry, I was actually subscribing to your YouTube channel while you were talking because but no, it's an honor. It really is. Oh my God, thank you so much. I had a hell of a time talking about movies. It just makes me so happy to do that. So it means a lot that you invited me. It means a lot that just happy to be here, guys.
Well, we're really glad. We're glad. Thank you so much for coming and talking with us, being our first guest on the show.
That's awesome.
Super
Thank
cool.
you. Yeah, like I said, we never got a chance to talk about Mandy on Pop and Schlock, so I have like 3 years of, I need to talk about this, just building up in my brain meat.
I've been there. Totally understand. But yeah, so that's it for the show this week, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. We will be back in 2 weeks to talk about something else. You'll have to find out when we spin the wheel of Cage. We'll catch you next time. Bye, everybody.